So technically speaking, those telecommunications are generating data on us as citizens. They are then, in essence, without us realizing it, have got a bird's eye view of our societal norms. What? That we move around this way, we buy this, now we're tagging our phones here, we're on this website, we're on like rich data on the citizens, right? Now, if the industry is malicious, it could use that data for harm.
100%.
Right? And so, is the government thinking about that?
Hi.
Hello.
Really? Atenkosi Ngubevana. How are you doing, man?
Good.
Good, thanks. Thank you for making the time to have a chat with us.
Pleasure.
How's the summit so far?
It's been interesting.
Yeah?
I actually am not the biggest technocrat, interestingly enough. I enjoyed the values session with Mahale and Kriya. They're looking after the V20. You know how there's a G20, B20? So they are formulating the kind of societal values we need to encompass as we are adopting AI.
What was their chat about?
Apart from the spicy lack of values in South Africa, government corruption,
Oh,
it was almost to say we need to go back or actually have a conversation in terms of what does it need to have to live in a values-based society. Then that way, as we're adopting AI, we need to encapsulate that in our AI solutions so that we are not causing more harm or unintended harm. So we need to be deliberate in how we collect our data, what use cases we use, how we have inclusive growth when it comes to AI. And so I'm a big believer in how AI can be a great accelerator, but can further perpetuate the societal divide that we have.
interesting.
So for me, that spoke to my core value as a leader.
How does that lead into your work with Vodacom?
So there's two parts of my portfolio in Vodacom. I look after the AI and automation team at a group level, which is all the countries where Vodacom operates. And then we recently started an AI lab, right? And then in this AI lab, acknowledges that we don't know it all in terms of AI. So the idea behind the lab was to try and understand to what extent can we use AI both for purpose and for profit. So you'd find that we are partnering with organizations that have got similar purpose themes to Vodacom. So Vodacom is a purpose-led organization with a strong anchor in uplifting society. Education, particularly, is one of my personal values. Then you'd find supporting of basic health in terms of pregnancy in women and prenatal and postnatal care, and then water health in the planet. So there's like a whole theme around purpose that the organization enables. And the reason why is that we appreciate that if we do not invest in education, right, the long-term effect is that those people that are not educated are going to be future employees. So it's not purpose for the sake of. And if we don't take care of our planet, then we literally won't have a planet to operate in, kind of thing. So there's the purpose was are greatly linked to the long-term sustainability of society and therefore our organization. So now we're trying to see to what extent can we use AI to enable those pillars also, and then try and do research in terms of, from a profit perspective, where can AI further enable our growth and profitability.
Okay. Interesting. A lot of companies have done great work in demonstrating what they can do with AI. It's a constant theme around corporates. And it certainly, I think it ends there. They just demonstrate we can do these cool things. But they hardly ever speak on the impact of what they did with the implementation of AI. What do you think that is? And why isn't there enough talk and products being put out to say, this is the impact we have had in society, in customers and people as a result of these products?
So you'd find that we're in a wave of hype. So AI had been in existence since 1954.
What?
So exactly. there's been different waves, peaks and troughs, right, of the technology. Now, in our organization, we started AI about 10 years ago. Let's say, because we wanted to know to what extent can we have personalized sales capabilities where we get to know the individual based on your behavior and the data that we collect on you. Then when we call you at the call center, there's a customer value management that says, Ati likes going onto YouTube. Ati has this kind of phone. Ati lives in Dekpetview. Ati lives in Gauteng, and she works in Midrand. Because if you think about it, during the day, I'm connected to this base station or tower. During the night, I'm connected to this tower. So technically speaking, we kind of know where you live and sleep and where you work, purely because you're connected to our towers. When we use rich data, we then use machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence, to personalize sales campaigns and personalized deals, right? What has then happened, and then we used AI from a fraud perspective where if Ati is an active fraudster, to what extent can we then pick up the syndicates around Ati she's committed to through machine learning? Now, that is outside of generative AI, which is something that kicked off in November 3 years ago. That is where the hype is now. It's a generative element of it that says to what extent can AI create AI from itself and the data that it was trained on. So the hype now is, this AI is going to change the world. Yes, it is. When you're doing a proof of concept as a consulting house, you're almost like a magician, smoke some mirrors. And then the Exco board members are like, wow, AI. Then real life happens, right? Because one of the precursors to AI adoption and scale is quality data.
Absolutely.
In order for the data to be there needed to be deliberate strategy of digital transformation. That stopped being sexy like 3-5 years ago.
Oh.
There was a digital transformation hype. Everybody's title had digital something in it. Okay. After that, we realized transformation is not a switch.
Yeah.
So the transformation then did not happen. It stopped being funded because of the hype. One of the things our organization did well, had enough resilience and foresight to realize the pain we have to go through really just cause. So we have a strong transformation strategy that I say to a large extent has been executed. We then have a strong data culture. And now that the AI generative part is here, it's simpler to then plug the technology. So the technology in of itself is not where the value is. If the underlying data, underlying business processes, people and change management is not in place, you're not going to get the adoption that you want. And then our people are blaming the technology as opposed to the value chain that is needed to be there in order to unlock the value. So that's why when you're doing a proof of concept as a consulting house to an organization, you're using a subset of curated data, which is like almost like a simulated perfect environment. Then when you have to now roll it out in real life, you realize your infrastructure, your data, your people, your process is not an enabling environment for AI scaling. And that's where I can tell you, Gopri, a lot of organizations do not want to admit that they first have to do the heavy, unsexy lifting before they can then talk about the AI scaling.
That is a scary picture. So startups have no chance.
They do.
How so?
Right? Because if you think about it, you have a mansion and you want to now make your house make out of glass.
Right.
Whereas I am a startup and I have an empty field. Right? The amount of effort it would take for you to build it and reconstruct or renovate a house that you built in 1950 to have glass windows that are more glass and so that the foundation might be cracked and all of that. Whereas if I've been saying, I want to build a glass house from scratch,
It's easier.
it's easier. So they have the opportunity to leapfrog and surpass the institutions that have been there longer, because it's not easy for us to turn. Like to do this will take us like 5 months. As if you're a startup, you're like shifting your neck and then you kind of thing. So nobody should ever feel as though they are too small to surpass grand organizations like mine.
But I'm thinking the value chain that Vodacom and the likes have created, that value chain startups just will not afford. And it is that value chain that enables organizations such as yours to thrive and to deliver value to your customers. This guy at if he's just starting, all he has is free data.
What is this value chain that you speak of that is required to succeed?
You have processes, you have resources, you have human capital, you have it all.
A telco isn't a fair example, though, as for a startup into an incumbent, simply because of regulatory structures in terms of infrastructure, all these kind of issues that come into usually in a startup being a telco.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about startups in the telco sector, just startups in general.
Okay. So I believe one of the downsides of being a multi-billion rand organization is that decisioning is slow.
Yeah, that is true.
In order for me, as an example, and this is like exaggerated, I want to buy a microphone because now, I don't know, we need to speak to our customers. If this microphone was not asked for in budget, prisons, you have to wait for 12 months, as an example, unless you have a deviation process, which is not encouraged. But if you are a small enterprise,
Sure.
you just go to Macro and buy a microphone and move on.
With my credit card in this case, yeah.
So you see how the decisioning is more, right? Even if you don't yet, you don't need 1 billion because you don't have 1 billion customers in billion rands. You don't have 1 billion customers to cater for. But what could do is to then define what does it mean to service customers in Johannesburg, because now I can define the more efficient way. And when I'm defining my processes, there are open source technologies, right, that I could use that are safe enough for me and my small entity, whereas a bigger organization cannot. They need the process of buying software is easily like a 3-year decision, right? So again, the speed to market.
Right.
Now, when then I want to pivot and try new things, I invest less, I learn fast, and then they'll shift. Whereas if we've invested 10 billion into this mic, because some consulting house said, not this mic, but this way, because you are the big entity, you need a big mic. We actually only need this. But then the decision makers are not close enough to the specs of this. They'll just, now we spent 1 billion on a mic. Best believe we're going to try and make that mic work. So that analogy alone is how the difference between the larger entities and the smaller ones. The smaller, even the startups have an opportunity to experiment with free software, but as they grow, open source, they're able to then have more stronger architectural infrastructures that are put in place. Then what I'm also finding is that a lot of these small startups create ecosystems. Okay. And I'll give you an example of when, if I'm an entity and I know I'm going to be on the internet and the web and I'm going to be handling sensitive data, I can then outsource my cybersecurity capability as opposed and get almost the best at a fraction, because we are going to a group of specialized SMEs that specialize in cybersecurity. Whereas in a bigger organization, we are the cybersecurity. The people that have been there for 15 years. They struggle to even think about processes on what does cybersecurity and AI world mean. Whereas the smaller entities will outsource it, faster implement, they could protect themselves easier than the bigger entities.
Okay.
So then with the growth now of AI, reaching markets is fundamentally, my market is no longer Johannesburg, it's the world. And so if I can then start in my home from a physical product solution-based organization, there's no time in the world where we can deliver things faster across the globe like now. This now means that I could be at home making my product and shipping it to the US or
Right.
Singapore.
Right.
So we are competing with the smaller entities. But then the moment they realize that, they'll start acting like it. Because now they almost think, because they're small, they think small and act small. Whereas for me, the target market is the world. But if the SMEs or small players don't see themselves like that, then there's a problem.
I mean, I've just realized we're kind of in a space we haven't talked about today yet. Most of our conversations, there has been a lot of startup conversation, but also we've been talking very much in terms of national policy, regulatory frameworks and so on and so forth, and how we plug into those kind of things where that, yes, will trickle down perhaps from a policy perspective, but you're in a nice space where you may be an incumbent corporate and a little bit slower in that regard, but you're certainly the commercial drive for me is an interesting one, because it actually does open up opportunities to yourselves that, because you've got the backing behind you, the money behind you, you can do interesting things that startups can't do, but at the same time, you're not bound by the mess that is government most of the time. So what opportunities are you seeing as Vodacom to really sort of lean into the tech that you can build based on the money and the sort of the gravitas you have behind you?
So as part of the comment I had made earlier on about the AI lab, right? We kind of been given funding to work with external parties who most of the time, I know this sounds horrible, but they just want a chance, right? Most of the time they'll say, let's start with the proof of value, which will be free for 6 months or 3 months. That allows for us, because of the brand, they also benefit from being associated with us. So that allows for us to then create a space of testing out concepts or ideas that we traditionally wouldn't have tested out before, because we have the brand. And then if it grows, then we can onboard the small player to help us move faster. So I think us acknowledging that we are big is almost one of my favorite books by Malcolm Gladwell, called David and Goliath. Is not really about the Bible story, but it speaks to the reason why David won was the fact that he wasn't a giant. So how do you, as a Goliath, then leverage David in a situation so that you don't incubate them to a point where they get swallowed by the giant, but they move fast enough to help you move forward? I think that's for us what we are seeing as an opportunity.
Yes.
That almost creates that balance of protecting the innovative nature, but also leveraging the scale that we have as a giant that we are.
One of my fears with big corporate in South Africa is their ability to swallow small guys. A great product created by a founder somewhere turns into just a desk in a big corporate. Is there anything from a legislative or governance perspective that we can do to avoid this from happening, or is it just part of the nature of the game?
But is it the startups that are worried?
Not necessarily, because if I've got a business of value and I'm struggling to scale, I want to scale, but I'm struggling to scale, and somebody says, I can put you out of your misery, so I can take this problem away for. That is not an exit strategy if you hadn't planned it. It's a forced exit strategy.
No, but I mean, if you think about it, there's people, entrepreneurs that are serial entrepreneurs, who get the thrill of being pioneers and starting something new. They get the thrill of, I've built it, now it's at operational stage, and it's value of it so much, and I'm actually willing to set it in the bigger players, right? And now something new.
Okay.
So there are a large community of people who actually prefer it that way, because they don't want the structure of now having the scale, because then it takes away from the fun of being an entrepreneur. Now they start becoming the big corporate that they actually were running away from. So I've met a lot of entrepreneurs who actually enjoy that. Then they'll tell you, no, I lost so much money here. I thought I would sell it at so much, but I couldn't. Then some of them would be like, I made millions in this money now. With that idea, I was able to fund and start these other ones. So for me, there's that part that says you've got those people whose drive is to start something new, get it up and running, and look at it and then hand it over. What I don't know is What would cause a company to buy an organization freelance and not use the products and services? It could be for monopoly or oligopoly sake. But I mean, you do have government interventions that would put regulatory guardrails in place to avoid the strong oligopoly into monopoly kind of space. And you'd find that, especially in the bigger industries, when by one company merging with another or buying over, it will give them a sizable share of the marketplace. That then gives them an unfair advantage. And then literally the regulatory or competition commission or the regulatory body would then decline that.
Yeah.
So I've seen many of those situations where if the purchasing of one smaller player by a bigger player would give them too much market share, then that is where the regulation can then come in almost trying to protect the consumer.
Right.
Because if there's limited players in the market, like in our industry, it's a capex heavy industry. So you can't just have small people. But the moment the smaller players are able to grow, especially in the fiber states, and then we try and consume all of them, then we're starting to become a monopoly, oligopoly. So that's where then you'll find the competition commission would review such things and see whether it's fair. And fairness also is protecting the consumers against one large player that will then control the price and then open the society to abuse. So there is that other extreme that protects the consumer based on those commercial arrangements.
Okay. And do you see the same in terms of a regulatory framework when it comes particularly to AI? Are we regulating adequately in that space?
No. And I'll tell you why I'm confident to say no. It's because there's so many things that we don't know.
Okay.
The industry in of itself, in its current prime, is still quite volatile. And then the decision makers are always lagging. Chances are, by the time regulation comes into full swing, it would almost be a reaction to some adverse event. Because as humans, we like fire kind of thing. Whereas we know we should be regulating who controls our data, isn't it? So as part of my talk earlier on, I was making a comment about in the space of things to consider about sovereign AI.
Right.
Is data stewardship, right? So as we're sitting here, we over our cell phones, we connected to a tower, doesn't matter who our provider is. So technically speaking, those telecommunications are generating data on us as citizens. They are then, in essence, without us realizing it, have got a bird's eye view of our societal norms. Right. That we move around this way, we buy this, now we're tagging our phones here, we're on this site, we're on like rich data on the citizens, right? Now, if the industry is malicious, it could use that data for harm.
100%.
Right? And so, is the government thinking about that?
But surely there's laws in that area anyway, usage of data. And in that way, POPIA would be one of them, yeah. But
So POPIA would be the protection of the data. So imagine a world where I'm not sharing my data with you, but the way that I'm using the data. So say we are all the three telcos. I've got the data, but I'm then potentially selling something that is not necessarily good for you, but then I'm positioning it that way, and then you buy it, and then you get hooked.
Yeah.
Who's regulating that? I didn't share your data with anybody else, but I found a way to manipulate you as an Ivango. And I know it sounds conceptual, but if the people that hold data are not ethical, they can't do that. Right? So from a data stewardship perspective, there's no conversation from a sovereignty perspective to understand who governs what should be done and not done with from an AI use case perspective now. Not just the protection of personal information acts, right? So you can say we need to put guardrails in place for ethical AI. Hey, that's like
it's a big term, yeah.
Right? What does ethical AI mean? And you'd find that it becomes a concept of, again, do we have to define what our societal norms are ethically before we can then decide what is ethical in AI or not. Because if we use that example, is it ethical for you to, I don't know, sell me something that I'm going to be addicted to in the long run, as long as you make a profit, as long as you opt in?
Yeah.
Another person would say, hey, if you're 18 and you said yes, you're 18.
You saw the terms and conditions.
Whereas I'm then saying, you knew you were manipulating me. You saw my behavior and then you saw the gap. So are we aligned as a society on what is ethical?
Sure.
Let alone use of that.
Right.
And then from there, we then haven't even decided on when this data is there, what do we want to do with it? So the one example I always use, I remember speaking to one minister. I said, we don't have an AI adoption issue in South Africa in the government's hands. And I'll tell you why. Our receiver of revenue uses machine learning to improve on the collection rate.
But we can count on SARS. We can count on SARS to operate appropriately. Right?
Count on them to conjure fee.
Right. That means that they have an incentive.
Right. Yes.
Why do you get that not that same drive for provision of help? Right? Because it is not the lack of regulation, it's a lack of will.
Lack of it. Will you're defining will as incentive? No, I would say a lack of incentive more than will. Yeah.
There's no incentive.
Hey.
And that's unbearable.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
No incentive has to keep goodness for me.
Oh, so therefore then he was like disputing. I was like, I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about, no, we don't have enough regulation. If we can, I can show you one living example of a one government entity that is doing this and doing extremely well.
Yeah.
Right. Means it is not a competence function. No, it is not a regulatory function. It is not. SARS is the big brother of everything. It means we've got the data.
Right.
They knew where to find it. So why does the health department not do the same? Education department, safety, the provisioning services, right? So for me, that's for me with a value. That's why I was saying my favorite topic for today was about that values. That do we actually appreciate what the data and the AI can do to unlock the socio-economic conditions that could be unlocked and services be easily available to the user and adoption of AI and digital transformations services.
So when Vodacom, and from a high level, when Vodacom decided, okay, let's lean into making a labs of some sort and look at opportunities, look at how this can improve our business. What did they have in mind? Looking at for aspect of values or ethics or in terms of the business, what did they?
So we've got existing purpose pillars. One of them would be the education. Other could be access to help from a pre and postnatal. Then other would be actually supporting of farmers using devices to understand soil composition and crop yield, and then linking small-scale farmers to an ecosystem of larger purchasing power. There's a lot of purpose-led initiatives. Now the idea is, how do we then infuse AI in that?
Okay.
Right? So education, we're busy working on a AI tutor and a career guidance. So funny. The career guidance, then there was a lawyer who's part of the program. He said, Ati, I didn't think I should be a lawyer. I just did it for money. Oh. And now I'm 40 something. Actually, I'm looking forward to this career guidance, not for my child.
For myself.
To assess, because the purpose of that is it's a psychosocial tool that is accredited by the Department of Health, because using AI to decide based on your personality what is the best career for you to take is a psychological element that we then put AI on top, right? That is not going to be an easy journey, but we are on it to say, in a world where parents cannot assist their kids in terms of career guidance, literally teachers, how do we enable these kids to know what to study and when to study and what subjects to do? Because again, in the long run, we need to make sure we've got the right kind of people that are in the right position because of their skills, preferences, and personality types, they wouldn't die. So all of that itself is like an idea that we are working with from a purpose perspective. No profit whatsoever. Basic Department of Education is also on board, kind of thing. So that's how we are then using AI and also seeing who we can partner with in then fast tracking this. That already will cost us if we partner, but we're almost comparing whether do we use our internal capability or use a small player in the education space that can help us fast track this kind of.
Can we see an improvement in your share price?
In the share price, our share price is doing well.
It hasn't for some time.
It's got its seats and toughs, but it's a highly paying dividend share price.
Yeah.
So that is the strength. So I think that is what I think the our share price is grossly undervalued, considering kind of work that we do and the value that we bring to society. That is another conversation.
So that's very
What you're speaking about there, it sounds like it's rooted a lot into strategy. You guys you speak a lot of purpose. Everything was purpose driven. I don't know. I'm just hearing that you guys sat down and were intentional about the strategy that you want to implement AI on. You had a vision and products to build and a clear strategy built for that. Same sort of tone you get around SARS, that they were very clear onto what they want to achieve, what value they want to deliver, and the strategy that should be drawn to deliver that. What does our national AI strategy look like if we're lacking so much?
Okay, so what I was a part of a community of people that was invited to help set the tone for that. So the idea they were to, yes.
Yes, I think I saw.
So what became interesting is we were invited.
Right.
I think the person who invited me said they saw my profile on LinkedIn and then they asked around, which was quite scary, but anyway, they asked him. And then I got it. A few people said yes. I'm like, good for it, kind of thing. And then the idea was at the beginning, it was to try and understand so everybody in the room knew what AI was as a start. Whether through research, whether through public sector participation, private sector decision makers, there was like a myriad of people in the room. And so we then needed to understand, what do we want as South Africa? We want to be able to understand our ownership of our infrastructure, or to what extent can we influence the infrastructure, data centers and everything. How do we then ensure we've got a strong data and ethical framework? Because to the point I was making, we are constantly creating data. Who gets to own the data? Control it? Then what kind of partnerships should we consider that the government, both public and private sector, consider, and why? Then how do we unlock skills that will ensure that we build contextual AI solutions that will benefit society? Greatly. And then what are the key areas or industries that from a socio-economic perspective that the government should be focusing on? Yeah, right. Those are the 5 pillars that we then went and did research on, looked at what are the international trends, what makes sense in the African context, and then we made those recommendations for the national strategy.
Okay. Is it solid enough? I mean, are we implementing on the strategy? Is it?
Yeah, it hasn't been signed yet, hasn't it?
No.
Yeah, okay.
May June.
It's not policy per se.
It's not policy, but it's almost a guiding thought. And I think and that's where that mastering sovereign AI book comes in.
Okay.
Because this is how corporate actually operates. And so all of the elements that I was mentioning, that's what we do. We need to make sure we understand whether we want to be cloud or on-prem. We need to understand where our data sits, how it's stored, all of that. We need to know why we want to do AI. Is it purpose profits? In that, what are we going to be doing? Do we want partnerships or do we want to build ourselves? Then we're very deliberate on upskilling. because we recognize they can't rely too much on consultants because they're now IP leads. And then we decide on the use cases to tackle every year. So that strategy at a national level is very similar to how thriving organizations are approaching AI. When you say it's strong in that sense, that is just that now at a national level, it becomes grander and more complex. But
Should governments be, the South African government in particular, should it be consulting private so much, in the sense that if the government implements those 5 pillars, technically they then compete with private?
not really. It will be complementary because government cannot upskill everyone.
Yeah.
So part of the upskilling agenda could be, as a nation, we have identified 20 key skills that you provide. Government can maybe only do 20%. 80% will come from the private sector because the private sector also needs it. So it's not as if the government will come up with random skills that are not with consultation with the private sector. Then you'll find that the government will then incentivize, if you qualify as a data scientist that was upskilled by Vodacom, we get tax breaks, as an example. So as part of the bigger national agenda, we then, as a private sector, get incentivized to upskill.
Yes.
That's the relationship between government and the private sector that should be there as an enabler of the longer term goal, but learning from the agility and innovative nature of the private sector.
So that's the thing. You got to ask SARS if you didn't do anything. SARS will say, yes, give a tax base, right? Yeah.
Well, I give it to SARS, man. They deliver.
It's behind everything.
The guys deliver.
So I don't think it's a government in isolation, because generally government tends to lag when it comes to education. So if the private sector is not leading the conversations in the room, then the government, technically speaking, doesn't have enough intellectual capacity that is practical. You find you've got the research wings within the government, but quite research intense. They don't have that practical element.
Okay. I think that was a very clear and insightful conversation. I appreciate that. It was good.
Before we let you go, you're a you co-wrote a book,
Yes.
co-author. That was the book?
Mark's book, the one that was here.
Oh, okay.
Mastering stuff.
Yeah, Mastering Sovereign AI.
The very book?
Yes, yeah. The one that was here, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't bring the book,
Yeah.
but it exists.
Okay. We'll leave the link in the description below. Thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting
Thank
me.
you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Has been the Angle Podcast. Thank you.